welcome to my channel. So today I've got a balance that I've installed or put into my lathe, and it includes the balance staff, and the roller table with the jewel is also attached. So the problem I had here was the movement, the lower balance jewel movement and the upper balance jewel movement are, I think, perfect. But the staff that I installed was a brand new NOS staff, new old stock staff, and it is a bit long, and I believe a little bit fat on the bottom. So what I've done is I've decided not to use my J-Cot tool. I've decided to actually mount it up on the lathe, on the watchmaker's lathe, and then spin this baby. I'll just give it a little spin here for you, and use probably use a stone to shave a little bit off the tip of that pivot. It's very dangerous work, because if I shave too much off of the lower pivot, it's going to lower that balance of the table, right? So it's going to lower that table with the impulse jewel, and if it lowers that table too much, it's going to hit the pallet fork. So this is scary stuff. So it makes me very nervous when I do this kind of work. So it's got to just take a little tiny bit off the bottom and not be too zealous when I do it, and then refit the balance staff onto the movement, and then see if it lowers the balance cock, because the balance cock was just up a shade, just a little tiny bit, and you could tell by looking at the base of the balance cock where it feeds into the lower part of the movement, and I could see a little crack there. Then I put the screw into the balance cock, and I screwed it down a bit, not really tight, but enough, and I found that the balance wasn't moving freely anymore. So basically the balance without the screw was just riding on top of that the balance staff, which means the balance staff is too long. So I'm going to shave just a little bit off the bottom. I looked at this with my stereo microscope this morning, and I looked at the distance between the roller table and the pallet fork to see how much I could actually remove. And I'm not sure what the measurement would be. Probably 0.01 millimeters I need to take off the bottom, maybe 0.02, but no more than that. And then I'm also going to shave the edges a bit, because as that balance staff goes down a bit, it's coned, so it might grab the jewel a bit more, so I've got to take a little bit off. So that's the job this morning. It's tricky as heck. I don't recommend this to people that are brand new at doing watch repair, but I find that this is the best, most controlled way of taking a little bit off the top of that balance staff and trimming that pivot just a tad. The other method, of course, is using the J-Cot tool with a bow, and that's also doable, but not as controllable, I find. So it's not as easy to take the material off, especially when you're putting the pivot through the round disc part of the J-Cot tool in the hole, and you're trying to remove material from the tip of that. It's just not as easy to tell how much material you've removed. So I want to do a good job on this, and so it's a tough job. But anyway, that's the job this morning, and let's see how well this works. So I'm going to start off here with this stone here, and I'm going to remove a bit of material with the stone. I've got to get super close up, so I've got to get my super close up goggles on, and which makes the pivot look really big, and hopefully I don't hit the tip of the camera with my head. So we'll get in here and just start this job. Alright, I'm going to have to use my golf voice here. So I'm holding this here on the bottom, of course, and I've got a good view of the pivot here. So I can just remove a little bit of material from this pivot here. I want to shorten that just a bit, so taking a bit of material off the end there. Now I've got to work on that pivot a bit to make sure it's smooth. So it's not bad there. And then I'm going to take my burnishing tool out, and the burnishing tool is used just to smoothen it out just a bit on the end. Burnishing will harden the pivot on the end, but be careful here so I don't take too much off here. And also, holding the burnishing tool here with the balance on is a little tricky. And you got to use the very tip of the burnishing tool where there's just metal. There's no other. Okay, that's so now I'm going to just take this out of the lathe and then test it on the movement. And just to make sure I don't have undue pressure on this, I'm going to loosen this up a bit first. Just loosen that just a bit, and then stick a piece of Rodico on the end, and this will stick right onto the bounce and the pivot. And then when I just loosen this up, just loosen that a bit more here. There we go. And I just want to pick this out in the Rodico. There we go. That Rodico will make sure that the pivot doesn't get broken on the end. So that's what you do. So I've decided to install this into my Myers number 58 movement holder, the world's best movements holder. And I'm just going to have a look at the pivot on the end, make sure everything is okay. So I've taken a little bit of material off of there, and I'm just hoping I've got the right size here as I do this. So I've got to be very careful putting it in. I don't want to have any pressure on the balance staff here as I place it into the movement. So there we go there. Now just put in the balance cock here very carefully. And so this is a time where I'm starting to pray a bit, right? Make sure it's all good on the up and up, as they say. Just lower that down a bit. And that will hopefully fit down into the hole like that. So I've got some movement there. Let me just grab my puffer to make sure I don't put any pressure on this. I puffed it one way and I puffed it the other way. Now I have to look at the base of this to make sure there's, when I put the screw in, I don't have the issue where it's bogging down. So let me just grab the screw here. I know that there's a bit of distance between me and you here. I need to grab some kind of a toothpick here to hold that balance down, the balance cock down as I put the screw in, because I don't want that to move at all. And just hold that in like that. Now, if I put the balance, I tighten down on the screw here, and this thing's still a bit snug, I'm going to check the distance that I have above and below that balance fork. You know, I want to check to make sure the balance fork isn't near that roller table. And then I'm going to adjust that again. So let me just screw this down first. I apologize for the distance here on the video. So, but it's not, there's nothing exceptional I'm showing here. So just showing how I'm tightening it down here. And so that's tightened down a bit. And do I have, well, that's still a little bit stuck, see? It's not moving as freely as I want it to move. So I'm going to loosen that up again. And you'll see as I loosen that up just a bit. See, now we got freedom here. So I'm going to now leave it like this and check how much play I have, because I think I want to take material off the top now. I don't want it to get too close to the pallet fork on the bottom side. So let me just look at that under the microscope. So here's the situation. I was a little tiny bit worried about trimming any more material off the pivot, the lower pivot, for lowering that balance too much so it wouldn't catch the pallet fork perfectly. And actually, I didn't really want to take any off the top of that pivot either, because it's just so close. So I've decided, I'm hoping this works perfectly, but I've decided to just shim the balance. So this is a common practice that was used in watchmaking. You can argue with me, but I've read about it, and all you do is you take a bit of watch paper, this stuff here, and you very carefully with your scissors cut a piece off, a slice off of watch paper. Then you fold it over, just like I have here, fold it over, and you slide it underneath the end of the balance here, and you shim it. And in this case here, I've shimmed it, and the thickness of this shim is just enough to allow me to tighten the screw. Now, had I taken more off the end of the pivot, I would start to get into the rounded or the curved part of that pivot, which could cause me to lose more of my pivot on the end. Could also might result in the balance lowering a bit, and then causing an issue with respect to the distance between the balance itself and the roller table, because it could hit the roller table. It's still got a little tiny bit of room there, but I really don't want to take any more off that pivot. So I took enough off to allow me to just insert a shim here. And with this shim, if I grab my little blower here, I'll just show you. And this is tightened down. You have to trust me on that, but if I grab my blower, you'll see how loose that is right now. So that's perfectly loose. I'm just barely touching this, right? So this is exactly where I wanted it to be. And I want it to basically shim up and fit in there perfectly. So and it does, which is nice. So what have I got here? It stuck a little. There we go. Free that thing a bit. So I think I was squirting it, and it was hitting the back. So I gotta make sure this is in the right direction here. There we go. So I'll reassemble this and make sure that it's working perfectly, and make sure that, you know, if the shim works, great. If the shim's got issues, then that's another problem, but we'll go from there. All right, a bit of an update here. So I actually took the screw's not in here, but I just tested it 2 seconds ago, and I took my stone like this, and I held the balance in my hand, and I filed a little bit off the top pivot, and then again with my hand I rolled that pivot around this, or on this stone here, to take any edges out that might be there, although there shouldn't be any. And I lowered it enough that I don't need to shim it up, which is excellent. So now I'm going to put the hairspring on and see if I can assemble this and get it running again. So how do you put a hairspring back in a pocket watch? Well, I've already aligned it, and I made a little red mark on the shaft here where the stud would go. So I had to fix this too, because it had an issue, and I had to restud it. So we'll see. You're going to just very carefully take this out without any problems here. I want to just remove this from the jewel hole so the jewel doesn't bend that pivot on the bottom. I was a little worried about that. So I just put this aside, put it on a piece of Rodico so the pivot on the bottom has no issue at all. And then I got to get my little bench staking thingamajobby doohickey doohickey thing, this here, and find the right hole, because I'm going to push the hairspring back on. Actually, I think what I'll do, just to be a good boy here, is use my staking set and set that up so I push the hairspring down nice and carefully and straight down. So I'm going to use this stump here, because this will allow the jewel to just fall through, and then I'll be able to push the hairspring on where the the table here with the impulse jewel will fall through here, and then the table will sit on top of the of this particular stump that I'm going to put into my staking set. Just hang on a second. Here I've got Mr. Stump on the staking set here. So the other thing I need to do is find a stake that'll fit over the top of this here, so when I push down, it's just going to push down nicely over the top. Well, I don't have to worry about it. So let me go find that stake now. There, I found the stake, so I'm going to just put this on top here, and I hope this works. I'm not sure whether this is going to work or not, because it could take a lot of pressure to push this down. So I've got to find the hairspring now and put it on top. I'm not sure if I like the way this is working, because if it slips at all, then I've got a different problem altogether. So maybe I don't know. I'm gonna have another look at this. So I changed my mind, and I got a stake which I'm gonna push all the way through the inverto set here. Inverto. That means it goes all the way down to the bottom. So push the stake all the way through like this. It'll sit on the bottom. As you can see, the stake's got a notch on it on the top. And then I should be able to just rest that on top here, which gives me a little bit more material touching the roller table. And the roller jewel, the impulse jewel, will fit right in the middle. And if you look at this is the stake, I said that will go right over the top of that, like so, and that'll push the spring back on, right? So that's the setup right there. Let's see if we can do this. All right, I got the spring on the end of my tweezers here, so I'm going to put the spring down and try to line up the stud. Let's have a look at this so it doesn't screw up. There we go. And just see if I can line up the stud here. I'll take it from this side. I want to go in here nice and easy, like so, and then line this stud up. This is tricky stuff. I was kind of holding my breath there, so I know the stud is where the red mark is, but it's not exactly where the red mark is. It's just over from the red mark. It's over the other way, not the way I have it right now. So I need to adjust it. So I'll just grab the stud a bit and see if I can just move that, right? I'm not sure if this is in focus, but I'll just get in nice and close here so you can see. My Reebok shirt on here. There we go. So I just want to grab this stud. I'm being very careful here. And I just want to hold it and move this spring over just a bit. I think right about there is where I wanted it lined up, because it's just to the stud was just to the right of where that red mark was. So I'm just going to go down on this now for briefly here and make sure we're good. Yeah, let's move it over just a bit more. I wonder if I can do that. It's in there pretty good now, though. Now you got to basically put a screwdriver blade in the collet and twist it ever so slightly. Turn it. Don't twist it. There we go. I think that's much better. I'll be able to check it with respect to a bead error anyway after, so just lower this carefully here. Everything is kind of in place here. I don't have the jewels in the right place. I'm not at risk of damaging anything, hopefully. Yeah, the jewel has fallen through, and you can see that in the slot. There's the slot right there. And so if I push this down, there we go. So now that's pushed down in place, and the stud is just to the right of that, so that's good. So that's, now I have to put the stud back onto the balance cock here, or balance bridge, whatever you want to call it, whatever school you come from, and then tighten the screw on that, and that should be not super difficult to do, but I wish this was a lot easier though, because you could just drop it down like that, and then it would be, and tighten it, it would be perfect, but it never works that easy. So I tend to just put it onto a piece of Rodico upside down, and I get my microscope out, and I have it at an angle like that, and I ride it at the angle, and then and then I make sure that the hairspring is actually riding inside the regulation forks here, the regulation pins on the balance cock. So let me get at that. I can't photograph that, or I can't record that because it's just too close to everything on my stereo microscope, and I can't get the stereo microscope. The camera is that close to the stereo microscope. So sorry about that. Too bad, so sad. So we'll come back in a second after I've installed that pin in, or actually install the stud in, not the pin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good news. I got it ticking again. It's ticking nicely. I'm not sure what the amplitude is yet, but I'm going to take a little bit of 9415 and put that on the feet of the escapement, which should help it. And then I've got to oil the pivots on the top here, which should also help it. And the first time I put it on, the bead error was terrible because I had the stud on the hairspring on the wrong side, and the basically making the impulse jewel not lined up between the upper jewel and over here on the escapement. So it should all be lined up nicely, the impulse jewel, when it rests. So that wasn't working. So I took it off, took off the hairspring, put the hairspring back on, flipped it around, put the stud back in, and it's running. So it's excellent, and the screw is all the way in right now. So I didn't have to use a shim at all. So this is like real success, I think. So I'm going to just take this and just touch the feet of the escapement, and that should be good enough to complete the job. So that's it. I don't need to show you this thing coming back together, I don't think, because the job really today was to get that hairspring back on, to reduce the pivots so that it would fit, and it does now, and it's running wonderfully. So this is excellent. So Luke will be pretty happy when he sees his little old watch running again. And it's an old Waltham. I'll just have to put this baby back together after I do those escapement feet. Here's what it looks like here. Just bring this over for a second. That's the old Waltham there. So, and it needed a new mainspring as well, and all kinds of work on it. So that's it there. Thanks for watching my video, and I will see you next time. Let's bring this back into view, because this is a thing of beauty when you get one of these working, and I'm pretty proud. So there you go. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.